Chapter 6 The Nightmare. On that second night in the village of Aden, Wheatley dreamt again of what seemed to be his days as a knight in training before the trial. It troubled him that there was so much he did not know of his past, for the visions seemed dim and unfamiliar. Suddenly he woke with a start. It was still night, and the cottage was dim, lit only by the light of the moon shining through the windows. He had heard a noise from the other side of the cottage that troubled him. It seemed to come from the Lady Chell's bedchamber. He rose up, stepped quietly through the cottage, and approached her door. Being an honorable man, he knocked softly and inquired if all was well. The Lady Chell gave no answer, yet after a moment had passed he heard a sound of a struggle. Fearful for her safety, he opened the door and warily peered through the entrance. To his amazement, he found that the Lady Chell was moving around the room. Though her eyes were still shut tightly, she was darting to and fro, striking the walls and gripping her blanket. Sir Wheatley perceived that she was indeed walking in her sleep, yet he also realized that she was dreaming of the trial of the bow. Her steeled gaze was one that she had only worn in those dark days when they had fled the Queen together. He gently approached her, speaking soft words of comfort, and led her back to her bed. Hearing his voice, she calmed, and her countenance softened. Before leaving the room, Sir Wheatley paused to contemplate his past with the young woman who had been so kind to him, despite his terrible betrayal. Though she was sleeping, he spoke of his admiration for her, and how he thought that he would never grow as accustomed to a life outside the castle as she had. Indeed, he confessed to her that he felt he had no purpose in the village, and that his secret past would never leave him. He could only ever remember being a knight, and thus was it doomed to define his life. Half dreaming, half waking, the Lady Chell heard his words to her. As he left the room, she again thought of the days before the trial, and how they had still remained a mystery. She resolved that somehow she would find a way for them both to remember the past that they had forgotten. Chapter 7 The Distracted Archer. The next morning the Lady Chell was hard at work baking bread. Sir Wheatley joined her in the baking, yet for all his enthusiasm he was not as skilled as she. When all was done, he had formed a loaf so deformed and unrecognizable that the children of the village came from far and wide to wonder at its strangeness. Though it was hard as a stone and most assuredly not fit to eat, the Lady Chell thought of another use for it. She and Sir Wheatley brought it to Garrett, the blacksmith, who took the misshapen loaf and cut it up into smaller pieces. Then they all journeyed out into the field near the edge of Aden, where the Lady Chell and Garrett had set up an archery range. Though archery had been a task forced upon her, Chell wished to never lose that valuable skill, lest her past rise up to trouble her small village. Garrett had built a device that would cast an object of choice high in the air and provide a moving target for Chell's ever-growing skills in archery. This they did with Sir Wheatley's loaf, for the dense nature of the bread made it all the more satisfying to strike with an arrow. Chell sought to teach Sir Wheatley to fire an arrow, but he was not skilled in aim or dexterity. In addition to this setback, he became immensely distracted as Chell spoke to him of archery and aim. He beheld her face all the more closely, and remembered how he had felt in his visions of the past. This took up so much of his thought that his arrows all flew askew, nearly striking a flock of sheep in a neighboring pasture. Thus did the archery session soon come to an end. The three companions then went to the market. It was there that Garrett, who also served as a shopkeep alongside the town's chief elder, Aaron of Halifax, lived in a spare room adjacent to the marketplace. There he was keeper of a storeroom of valuable items that he and Aaron had gathered over the many years of their residence in Aden. Many of these items were remnants of the kingdom of Aperture, though few knew what purposes they served. The Lady Chell had long known that among these gathered items several unknown potions and elixirs were stored with the utmost care. Garrett had once told her of their many uses, though he did not spread that knowledge widely. One particular potion was found to bring back memories if a few drops were swallowed. Intrigued by Wheatley's dream, the Lady Chell beseeched Garrett to sell her a small vial of the strange elixir. He consented reluctantly, informing her that the exact effects were not known. As the Lady Chell bartered with Garrett, Sir Wheatley was left in Garrett's absence to keep watch over the various trade tables and wares in the market. While he was there, the young girl, called Ellie, the same girl who had greeted him upon his arrival at Aden, walked by on an errand for her father. When she saw Sir Wheatley, she remembered their last meeting and was afraid. Yet as she spoke to him, she found him to be a very kind fellow, and gave him a pin from her hair as a token of friendship. It bore the emblem of a frog in green stone, and Sir Wheatley took it with a smile and pinned it to his tunic. Sir Wheatley asked little Ellie what her errand was. She told him that she had been sent to purchase various items at the market for her father. Sir Wheatley, with great pride in his temporary position, attempted to reach up to a high shelf to retrieve an item for Ellie. Yet in his preoccupation, Sir Wheatley lost his footing and nearly brought down the entire market pavilion. The Lady Chell and Garrett heard the commotion and soon set things right. And thus, as the day ended, the Lady Chell and the former knight returned to her cottage once more. As they walked to the cottage, Chell pressed Sir Wheatley for a more detailed account of his dream. She also bid him try to remember what had taken place in his life before the days of the trial. But alas, Sir Wheatley could not recall any details save the day he had first become aware of himself, after the Queen had been defeated. He spoke of how he remembered the spell of the Queen falling away and suddenly realizing that he must escape. Then how he had tried to ask the other knights for help, and how he had at last woken the Lady Chell. Yet what came before was nowhere to be found in his recollection. This made the Lady Chell all the more resolved to try the potion that might bring back their pasts.